As a museum archivist, I'd seen my fair share of bizarre findings and odd expeditions that had made their way into our house of knowledge. From ancient animistic masks to queer bronze statues of men and women alike, they had made their way from the deep grave of earthly soil to our prestigious halls of fame. Here, humanity can adore them, give them purpose, and gain knowledge from them, as I think artifacts are the purest messengers of the past to us. But there are things that I dare say must remain hidden, for their knowledge is too powerful, too hideous for any sane man to bear alone. Artifacts of horror that must remain sealed into the deepest parts of the world and never to be unearthed, unless one wishes for his own demise. Such artifact had made its way to us, and with a cost that cannot be measured neither in gold nor coin, but rather in personal mental perseverance. Half a year ago, a close friend of mine, an archaeologist and professor of the University of Plovdiv, Ivailo Ivanov, along with his team, had made an extraordinary discovery. An old Thracian tomb had been unearthed near the outskirts of the small city of Dobrich, which is located in the southern part of the Bruja in Bulgaria. The discovery was rather important, since the tomb was fairly preserved, with many of its wall frescoes and statuettes having still their original ink pigments in large spots. Among the well-preserved artifacts, such as jewelry, pots filled with honey and wine, there was one extraordinary artifact that was making everything else rather insignificant. A golden mask placed over the mummy of a man. The significance of the find was rather joyful to say the least, since such find was rather rare and to be also in such prestigious condition. An archaeologist's dream, one may say. Preparations regarding the exhibition were already being set in motion as soon as the mask was discovered. I cannot hide that me and other colleagues of the National Museum of Sofia were rather proud to learn that we would be the first to exhibit the golden mask and present it to the masses. We were further noticed that we wait mostly a month for the mask to come, since tests and reports are needed to be written before sending it to exhibit it. However, due to circumstances which took us by surprise, we were informed that the mask would come to us earlier than expected. I was personally informed by another colleague of mine regarding the tragic situation that escalated at the excavation site 2 weeks after the discovery of the golden mask. Apparently, my dear friend Ivailo had become rather possessive of the damn thing. Some of his peers had even mentioned that he was driven into a state of utter madness. It was noticed mainly that he spent more time with the artifact, more than any sane man should. He would retire in a small tent for hours on long. With that, he would neglect his duties, and when he was confronted regarding the matter, he would act rather defensive and impulsive. Some even stated that he was becoming vulgar and more vile with every passing day. He was rumored to be practicing queer things with the mask, such like talking to it, praising it, and even wearing it, speaking in tongues that no man could understood. But things had turned to worse when one fateful morning, one of his colleagues had taken the mask from him, causing Ivailo to turn into a state of rage. He tore down the campsite, broke many of the artifacts, and even began violently attacking his colleagues, nearly killing one. Eventually, the man was driven into so much hatred and rage that he ran towards the direction of a nearby road, getting immediately hit by a truck that was approaching. What was left of dear Ivailo was only his name, that once admired and praised by many of his peers, is now shrouded in mystery, in utter disgust. 2 weeks had passed from the incident, and the mask eventually arrived to us, and with it came the journal of the professor, as well as some of his notes regarding the strange artifact. It is here where I could perfectly see his descent into madness. In the pages of his leather-bound journal, one could see the man's distress reflected in his own handwriting. The first few pages, I could see the once fair and beautiful writings of Ivailo, but not soon afterwards, such fairness was transforming into the hasty and delirious state of mind one can find in a madman. To find out what on earth the professor experienced in that excavation and caused him to be driven to such personal hell, one only needs to take a look at his writings. But in order to fully understand, one must take a look at the mask that was found in that treacherous and forgotten tomb. The golden mask had a strange mixture of cultural influences. It had an elongated jaw, similar to those masks often associated with the African shamanic culture. But the facial features of the golden mask were contributing to a more Roman Greco influence. Just like the cavalry masks used by the Romans, the facial expressions on this find were equally expressionless, giving a rather intimidating and uncanny sensation of fear. Another strange part of the mask was the third hole placed at the forehead between the two eye slits. From it, flutes were carved that spiraled towards the edge of the mask, making a strange whirlpool shape. But the most remarkable part of the mask was on a large golden plume that was placed sideways. The plume, or more precisely, the half golden plate that went from ear to ear on the mask, had a particular strange design. There were lines coming from the edge of the mask, reaching the edges of the golden plate, somehow imitating the rays of the sun. But on it, the golden plate, laid the most important part, and perhaps the strangest of them all. There were runic inscriptions that have no Greek nor Roman origin. The letters have more in common and are almost identical to those found on a small bronze artifact that was dated between the 7th and the 9th century, the Rosetta of Paliska. How on earth did writings of the 9th century AD made their way on a mask that predates the Thracian kingdoms of the 5th century BC? One can only wonder. The writings of Ivailo provide little evidence on the matter, as it seems he was rather puzzled by the issue as well. He wrote pages and pages in his journal, trying to somehow decipher the hidden code. The Rosetta of Paliska, for those unaware, is a small 7-pointed artifact that was found in the first medieval capital of Bulgaria. It somehow resembles a star with 7 points, and in the middle, one can find the common Proto-Bulgar inscription often associated with the god of sun in Sky Tangra. Could this tomb be at some point used by a cult of Proto-Bulgars? Or perhaps the mask was some way to honor the Thracian god of sun and was later adopted by the Bulgarian people. No one can yet know for sure. What is known is that the professor was determined to unlock the secrets of these strange anachronisms. And I must say, secrets he indeed had found. Couple of pages afterwards, his handwriting becomes rather hastier. And it's here where I suspect his madness had become apparent. What follows is a summary of some of the most readable parts of his writings that somehow make any sense. There is no doubt about it. This must be some form of ancient deity, either of the Thracians or perhaps a lesser-known god of the Greeks or Romans. But I hear them. I hear the old language, dwelling in the old walls, in amidst the frescoes and forgotten runic inscriptions. I hear the words, and I see them. Slunzedar. Slunzedar. I am sure it is the word for sun, or at least a variation, for it has a similar ring to it as to our own Slavic language, given the facts that many of the words of the Thracian language did involve and adapted to our own modern language as well. As the whole sun symbolism can be found all over the tomb, who can deny such statement? Furthermore, I must state that the runic inscriptions so far have been little to no help, since I cannot understand the way they were written on the mask. In order to compare them to the Rosetta, I must decipher one of them, a task rather hard. Less entries of the professor propose more mystery than answers regarding the matter, as the delirium mind of his began to crumble before my eyes when I have read his journal. What follows are his last and perhaps least readable passages of his find. I have worn it. Well, how could I not? For it spoke to me for so long, and I was ignoring it. She was giving me the answers, but I did not listen. Well, until now. Oh, how warm it felt, and smooth to the touch. I hear them, Lord, for the men outside my camp do not trust me, and I dare say, I do not trust them as well. For such knowledge you gave me, they do not deserve. You called me, and I answered first. It was meant to be, was it not? For why do you deny me again to see what you gave me last time? I am thirsty, not for water nor drinks will quench me, but knowledge of the beyond. You gave me a sip of the divine, but now I want more. And why should I not receive? It is sacrifice that you want. I already gave you my blood, but you want more. And I shall give, for my soul is yours to take. The warm sensation, I feel it when I grasp this golden artifact of beauty. Hear me, Slunze. Hear me, almighty golden one, for I have tasted once your knowledge, and I shall taste again. For when I wore it, I saw everything. I know everything. As the sun rays blinded me, they had given me vision of old days, primordial ones, far beyond the dreamed days of yore. Just like my ancestors, I was awakened. I know what lies amongst and beyond eons of space and time, where life matters. I saw the tall golden cities of Yith and the golden sons of Slunze with their golden skin and long expressionless faces. No Greeks nor Romans of the ancient time could dream for such knowledge, for this is much superior, much older and forgotten. And yet, it's close, and it's here, and we are part of it. We are nothing but a dream. We are nothing but a blink away from existence, for we live between the eyes of the oldest god man has never heard of. The oldest of gods, the father of the golden ones, the one who birthed Yith, and the one who will destroy it when he dies of age. And his time is near. His age is beyond comparison, but it's near, and our existence is near. The Thracians knew it, so did the Bulgars that settled here, and now I know it, and I shall be the new messenger. Slunze dar Yith, Slunze dar Yith. It is here where his passages and well writings end. What madness had this pure object made of gold driven him into such chaotic despair? To be frank, I was more profoundly astonished on how on earth such sane men with such prestigious academic reputation can be driven into such chaotic state of mind. I cannot hide my uncanny feeling of dread that shadowed over me after I finished reading his texts. Knowing the full tragedy that had unfolded the day he perished, things seemed more ominous. And that dreadful mask. Oh God, how it looked back at me with its expressionless emotions. Not soon afterwards, the mask was placed in the exhibition room, ready to be shown to the world. Deeply, I did not want this to be the case. But higher authorities had enough of the professor's profanities, as well as recent incident regarding the mask. Couple days prior to the exhibition, I was alone in the room making some final preparations. I was staring at the odd mask, gazing at the hollow holes, thinking what did the professor had seen through them. And it is here when I felt a sudden breeze upon me. And amidst it, I could hear faint whispers. Slunzedar. The words, gift of sun, exited my mouth without any hesitation upon hearing the whispers. As the mask was staring back at me, I could swear I saw the runes lit up in a fiery red. I was being betrayed by my own mind. But such thought was impossible. Yet my body was slowly making way towards the glass box. I felt that not only my mind was betraying me, but also my body. With haste movements, I remember lifting up the glass box and casting it aside. I do not remember the sound it made as it shattered to the ground. for in my ears, only the cacophony of whispers and high winds was heard, and the faint buzzing sound of unknown origin. Through the eyes of the golden mask, I saw an immediate ray of white light, causing my vision to be blinded. A warm sensation was present on my eyelids, as well as the golden mask pressing onto my skin. I felt as the skin of my face began to melt, merging in a way with the mask. But I did not feel pain, as the bright sensation was more overwhelming. Suddenly, where my forehead was, I felt my skin tear apart in a vertical position, and along with it came the vision. A vision that haunts my mind till this day. The vertical eyeslit had opened, and before me swirled an endless vortex of unimaginable colors and shapes. Within moments, towering buildings made of gold and brass came to vision, and with it came a spectacle of visions of unknown horrors. The titanic structures that were tall as mountains came into a clearer view, their architecture surpassed by any form of ancient civilizations. Yet, they had a primordial and rather grotesque design. As my body was gliding through the endless and vast city, the name of Yith was heard through the whispering winds. The streets seemed distant, as if a sea of white marble that shimmered under the setting sun. It is in these streets where the giants of the Old Testament or the titans of ancient Greek and Roman myth roamed for eons. And here they stood, proud and fierce. Their golden skin, comprised of scales, were reflecting the sun rays, illuminating their surroundings. Their light blinded me once more. But before that, I took a glimpse at the Titan's face. Their head had the very same elongated jaw as the mask. But it was the expressionless and rather grotesque face that had placed me into a state of despair. Their voidless eyes stared back at me as I flew among them, fearing that any moment a palm would swipe down and smite me like a fly. However, such act never did occur, but the thought of it until I passed by these creatures was giving me the sensation of utter terror. Soon enough, I was lifted towards the endless skies, and below me, the city of Yith was barely visible. Before me now stood the vast emptiness of space, with its planets and constellations in their prime state. The fierce and stormy Jupiter was nothing now but barren wasteland of rock and volcanic ash. No rings nor asteroid belts could be seen in either Uranus nor Saturn. And their planetary terrain was rather uniform, as a glassy surface was shimmering the rays of sun. As I glided through space and time, I saw the first colors of space beginning to take shape and size. The stars were there for me to reach, and I knew beyond them lay the one thing that has driven Ivilo into a state of pure madness. Subconsciously, I knew that beyond these stars, I would find something that I was not prepared for. I would see the edge of the universe, the realm of the so-called Golden God. But my trip was short, as it was abruptly stopped by the wailings and yelling of men and women. Before me, the walls of space began to crumble, and the dark and once empty void was filled with the fluorescent light that was forming in my vision. Above me, towering black shapes had taken place, gazing down at me. Their movements seemed slow and hazy, and one of them was right in my face and murmuring something that I could not understand. It was not long after that darkness began creeping again, consuming my vision one more time. I do not remember much afterwards, but I was informed later by colleagues that shortly after they heard the glass shatter, they rushed into the exhibition room, only to find me in a drunken state of mind. I was apparently pressing the mask onto my face and was walking around the room like a blinded man with no sense of direction whatsoever. I was also reported to have been yelling some nonsensical words and queer phrases. It was through the help of the staff that the mask was taken from my face, revealing to them a sight rather unpleasant. There behind the mask was my face of terror, with my eyes wide open and the pupil was at its smallest. The edges around my eyes were red and blistered, as well as patches around my face that showed irritation or some form of skin acne. Needless to say, such indecent and medical issues were enough for the museum administration to order me to take some time off in order to recover. I did hear that the exhibition would go as planned, and the presentation I was expected to give would be completed by another colleague of mine. An action that I somehow despise, as I wish that the mask would simply be casted into the deepest parts of the world and be forgotten with. However, there's a part of me filled with more malicious intents. The pure thought of these so-called experts of archaeology being confronted by the same powerful knowledge as I and Ivailo did does comfort me. Oh, how I could laugh at their faces as to how ignorant they are. Their wish to place such artifact of horror and exhibit it, so be it. If they wish to sacrifice their own and the audience's sanity for a mere brief nationalistic gratification, who am I to oppose them? But I dare say, their pathetic attempts on naming such grotesquerie as the sun god is a rather blinding thought of mine, for this is no mere simple god. Apollo, Yarilo, Sol, and even Tangra are mere gods, for this is beyond them, beyond anything that can be simply read or learned in a classroom. With such knowledge in my possession, let these professors and museum staff alike be damned, for they are their own harbingers of death and misery. Even I, that considered myself rather sane as in contrast to Ivailo, I suffer from the very same fate of madness. When night falls, and the stars appear in the night sky, memories of these primordial days begin to circle back. The shimmering and glowing streets of Yith, the titans of old eons, the vast abyssal and primal space seem to haunt me, making me thirsty for a forbidden knowledge that I know will be the cause of my death. Amidst the howling winds and the rustling leaves, I hear them calling for me. The residents of Yith, the mask, and its creator, along with their gift of sun, Slunzedar. Slunzedar.